So a new report says that Russia has suffered 1.2 million casualties in Ukraine and are advancing slower than was seen on the Western Front in World War I. Did you catch that? The poster child for a military deadlock, the armies fighting from trenches in World War I, advanced significantly faster than today's Russian military. Also, that little penguin suit that popped up in a video a few days ago, turns out it's a Russian poncho that guarantees 100% camouflage. More on that here in a second. Now, CSIS, the Center for Strategic and International Studies, released an article a couple days ago titled Russia's Grinding War in Ukraine. It'll be linked along with all of their data in the description below, where they say, quote, massive losses and tiny gains for declining power. They say since February 2022, Russian forces have suffered nearly 1.2 million casualties, more losses than any major power in any war since World War II. After seizing the initiative in 2024, Russian forces have advanced at an average rate of between 15 and 70 meters per day in their most prominent offensives, slower than almost any major offensive campaign in any war in the last century. Now, the article calls out some arguments that people are regularly making, and we still hear them today. One of them is Russia cannot be stopped. They eventually will win this war through sheer force of will. Okay, when? Like, do you see these numbers? Hearing the casualties are the highest from any military since World War II, and the pace is slower than anything, including World War I. Like, when are they actually going to make these eventual breakthroughs and seize the territory that they're trying to conquer? The second piece is that Russia continues to advance. No doubt you'll hear that in the comments below here as well. And technically, yes, that is true. I mean, in 2025, Russia did take 0.8% more territory of Ukraine, so less than 1 percentage point. But again, they are moving at such a pace that is making the trenches of the Western Front in World War I look like maneuver warfare at casualty rates that are putting that to shame. It's insane what's actually happening here. Now, diving into the article, they say a close look at the data suggests that Russia is hardly winning, and even more interestingly, that Russia is increasingly declining power. They say, how successful has the Russian military been in achieving the Kremlin's main objectives? And they looked at 3 key areas that we'll dive into today: fatality and casualty rates, the rate of advance of Russian forces, and the size of Russian territorial gains. Now, starting with the casualties, they say, according to CSIS estimates, Russian forces suffered nearly 1.2 million battlefield casualties, which include killed, wounded, and missing. And I'm going to add captured in there as well. There's not that many Russian soldiers in Ukrainian captivity. Technically, they would be rolled up here also. Between 2022 and December 2025, they say there were roughly 415,000 Russian casualties in 2025 alone, with an average of nearly 35,000 casualties per month. In addition, there were roughly 275,000 to 325,000 Russian battlefield fatalities between 2022 and 2025. So the key difference there, again, casualties, killed, wounded, missing, or captured. So the casualty number is always going to be higher. Fatalities then, or killed in action, of course, significantly lower. The CSIS estimate has that on or about 300,000 so far. Shocking numbers for 2025, 2026, right? Like I don't know. I never expected that we would have a war in my lifetime where a country suffers 300,000 killed in the span of a couple of years. Now, of course, a question here is going to be, what about Ukraine? Aren't you going to mention that? Yes, they get into that as well. They say Russian battlefield casualties and fatalities are significantly greater than Ukrainians, with a ratio of roughly 2 to 2.5 to 1. So 2 Russians killed, or 2 Russian casualties for every 1 Ukrainian casualty is what they're saying. They say Ukrainian forces likely suffered somewhere between 500 and 600,000 casualties, including killed, wounded, missing, and captured, and between 100 and 140,000 fatalities during that same time period. They call out a couple key explanations here. We'll expand on a few of these. They say Russia's failure to effectively conduct combined arms and joint warfare, poor tactics and training, corruption, low morale, and Ukraine's effective defense in-depth strategy in a war that favors the defense. There's not one thing. And to be fair, Ukraine struggles with a lot of those as well, right? They've got conscripts that are going to the front in some areas with not nearly enough training. There is corruption in the Ukrainian military, in the Ukrainian government. That's a thing. Morale. There's no one side that ever has a monopoly on morale at the front. So all of these things, to a degree, can be applied in both directions. From my perspective, Ukraine has the advantage in all of them. And piled one on top of the other, paired with these Russian forces having to go on the attack. I mean, we'll play a couple of videos from just the last 24 hours, and you see this day in and day out. And what is it? It's Ukrainian forces reinforcing the defensive line, especially in the east and the south, and Russian forces advancing, trying to advance across frozen open terrain, being hunted down by Ukrainian drones. Like, that is what is happening day in and day out. Advancing on today's battlefield is incredibly deadly and is a lot safer for the Ukrainian defenders that over time, especially in some of these areas in the east, have been able to build up pretty substantial defenses to protect themselves while they are out hunting the Russians on the battlefield. So should not be a shock right now that Russia is sustaining more casualties than Ukraine. And it's not just the CSIS study. Andrew Perpetua over on X does a great job running through a shocking amount of video data day in and day out. I'll link his work in the description below. He just released, after pouring through video data, their summaries of the total Russians killed in December 2025 that he says was the highest KIA month, so the most Russians killed they've ever seen by a wide margin. According to Andrew and his team and the work that they did, there were 5,724 Russians that they noted killed on camera in December. That averaged out to 184 per day, 48,869 per year, or so far in 2025, with an average of 134 per day. That adds up. And again, one of the interesting pieces here is this is not coming from commanders that are sending up bogus reports like we've seen at times in this conflict and recently seen by Russia, especially around Kupiansk, where they're falsely claiming advances that aren't actually there. What Ukraine has to do, especially with this footage that Andrew is looking at specifically, is they're requiring video evidence of the strike, of the kill, before saying, yes, that soldier was actually killed in action. So the numbers here are just absolutely shocking. Now, progress is the second one. How fast is territory changing hands on the front line? And for that, I'm going to pull up a map here. We'll go with deep state map. And I'm going to use kind of the standard look here because I think it's a little easier to look at this the way we're going to be. Starting down here around Pokrovsk. Now, this might look a little bit different than you're used to seeing because I've got the 2024 version of the map pulled up. Again, one of the reasons I think this map is so useful is you can click here on the calendar and go back to whatever date you want to see what the front lines looked like at that time. So here's Pokrovsk in the middle of the map. CSIS says, quote, after Russia won control of the city of Avdiivka, so a little here to the southeast is Avdiivka, in February 2024, Russian forces began a sustained offensive campaign at the nearby city of Pokrovsk, a key logistics and transportation hub that supported Ukrainian operations across the eastern front line. And we've talked about that regularly. I mean, especially as Pokrovsk came in the crosshairs, you can see how important it was to maintaining this any logistics through Toretsk, New York, Oshchirny, Avdiivka, and elsewhere up to Kramatorsk and Sloviansk. No doubt. It was, at one point, a very significant logistics hub. Of course, that's changed now because Russia has shut that off from being utilized. They say from late February 2024 to early January 2026, Russian forces advanced just under 50 kilometers at an average pace of around 70 meters per day. By January 2026, Russia controlled most of the city of Pokrovsk. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at jumping from February, so 2 years of progress here, February 2024 to January 2026. You ready? There we go. That is the progress that Russia has made in the Pokrovsk direction. We know this is one of their focuses in terms of offensive operations over the course of the last 2 years. I'll go back again so we can measure that to make sure that around 50 kilometers is roughly accurate. So we'll give that a quick look. We've got Pokrovsk here. If we go straight line distance, 37 to right there. If we come down a little further south, maybe if we go all the way to, let's go to Avdiivka, because that's where they were talking about the offensive moving from. Okay, 49 kilometers on or about. So the CSIS study tracks. Again, moving to today, roughly 50 kilometers straight line distance that Ukraine has taken. Now, an important context here is how does that relate to other wars? Because this goes back to the argument you'll hear from the pro-Russian crowd of, look, they're advancing. They're continuing to take territory. Okay, but I mean, yes, right? Russia has more territory under their control today than they did 2 years ago, no arguing that. Looking at some comparisons here that CSIS put together, in Chasiv Yar, Russia has been advancing 15 meters per day. In Pokrovsk, 70 meters per day. The Somme, Western Front in World War I, the deadliest day in British military history, if I do recall, 80 meters per day. They were advancing faster in the Somme than the Russians are at Pokrovsk. Belleau Wood, famous battle for the U.S. Marines in World War I, 410 meters per day. That is, I'm going to risk doing math, more than 5 times faster than the Russians are advancing in Pokrovsk. Again, trench warfare of World War I. We can move to World War II, and then it just puts all of this to absolute shame. Germany in Kursk, Russia, to kind of make it loosely relevant here, 3,220 meters per day. So do you understand what 15 to 70 meters per day is? How shockingly slow that is. To put bluntly, that is an incredible failure by the Russian military. Nobody thought that in 2022, 23, 24, 25, 26, we would be using the Western Front of World War I as a comparison for a major power advancing into a significantly smaller power and sustaining those types of casualties along the way. Now, another note here from CSIS is they say in all of the offensives over the last 2 years, Russia has failed to generate rapid breakthroughs to collapse the Ukrainian front line and allow for sweeping territorial gains. That's something that we have talked about regularly on this channel, is there is a grinding nature in this type of attritional warfare where it can be a lot of small gains or a lot of small progress, and then a lot can happen at once. A front line can collapse. We've seen that happen, and we've seen it happen in this conflict. Now, you got to go back a couple years at this point, and the breakthroughs right now, Russia a couple days ago talked about a breakthrough in the Zaporizhia direction. It was like 800 meters, right? So the term breakthrough has changed quite a bit, and we just haven't seen that. I think a lot of folks have been waiting, that have been following this war, waiting for the day that one side or the other actually breaks the line, and there's this rapid mass exploitation of armored units pushing through and rolling the other force back, and that's not happening. I mean, I think that was a fair argument in, say, 2023, even 2024, saying maybe just a few more chips in that armor and maybe this will come about. But that didn't happen in all of 2025. And it's very hard to look at the situation at the front right now and say, any day now, they're going to collapse. Because it looks very similar across the entirety of the front that it has for quite a while now. Now, shifting to territorial gains, again, there's no disputing that Russia has taken territory year by year. I mean, we have the clear video evidence of that. CSIS here tracking how much that has been. In fact, let's go back to the map because I think this is important. We've got this rapid advance near Pokrovsk, right? This 50-kilometer advance. But let's, zoom out to give an idea of what that looks like in the entirety of Ukraine. There we go. Now we got can we get all of Ukraine zoomed in a little bit? Now we're missing part of it now. But either way, that's what we're talking about. Little bubble over here. I'm covering it up. Little bubble over here is the 50-kilometer advance, right? So when we look at all of the territory taken by Russia, on this map, it is the purple that was taken by Russia in 2014, and this kind of light red taken by Russia since 2022. There's some of this up in Kharkiv and some in Sumy, and then the green is territory that Russia did take in 2022. They subsequently lost back to Ukraine. So when we look at how much territory Russia has taken, according to CSIS, since Russia regained the initiative in 2024, they took an additional 0.6% of Ukrainian territory. All right. They improved upon that in 2025, taking another 0.8% of Ukrainian territory. You see how slow this is going for just the eastern territories? Now, when you step back and look at, the especially adding Crimea here, they say in total, Russia has seized around 75,000 square kilometers, around 12% of Ukraine, since the 2022 invasion, and since 2014 have taken over approximately 20% of Ukraine. So again, minor move after minor move, and all you have to do is just step back and look at the overall size of the country. Even if you just say the halfway point, they're trying to get to Kyiv. My God, when we're talking decades, have you ever seen people try to do the math on how long it's going to take for them to even get to the Dnipro, the river bisecting Ukraine at this pace, let alone all the way to Kyiv? Again, every metric that we have based off of historical examples points to what Russia is doing right now as being just a colossal failure. It's hard to understand the scope of the casualties for the lack of progress, but I do think CSIS, in their most recent article, does a pretty good job of laying that out. Now, quick update on a fundraiser that we have going right now through Ukraine Frontline. It's a registered 501c3 nonprofit, so every one of your donations is fully tax deductible. We're at $29,000 of a $35,000 goal, trying to pick up trucks and generators for 3 different units. We've got the Ukrainian Gur Legion, some international volunteers there, and then medics with the 3rd Army Corps and medics with the 47th Mechanized Brigade. So this one's moving along really, really fast, actually, which is awesome, given how cold it is out there on the front. So looking forward to being able to help these guys out with those needs right now as the temperatures continue to drop in Ukraine. For those interested and able, the link to that campaign will be in the pinned comment and description. Now, a couple days ago, we started to see these, or saw for the first time, this pretty wild video of what looked like clearly it's not a penguin, right? Like, we know it's not a penguin in Ukraine, but it kind of looked like it. It just looked weird is the best way to put it. And then another one came out a few days later, and like, all right, maybe there's actually something to this. I mean, these are Russian soldiers. The video that you're seeing is a Ukrainian drone that in both videos goes in to strike and kill that Russian soldier. We got a little more information. It looks like this is a poncho on sale in Russian marketplaces, and it was kind of announced here by a spouse of a Russian soldier. She posted, quote, "I bought my husband an awesome white poncho for the war with a visor against wind and rain. He received the package the other day and immediately put it on for a combat mission. He said, of course, it's some kind of bullshit. I look like an idiot in it, but it's still better than nothing. But I'm 100% confident in the quality. They gave me a guarantee, 100% camouflage. Not a single enemy will notice him in his life. He will blend in with the terrain, so you won't even see him at point-blank range. I'm waiting for an honest review when he returns." Now, in fairness, I don't know if like the videos of the guys getting hit with drones wearing this penguin costume are the spouse of the lady that wrote this review, but we're probably going to see more of these. I mean, that's just, what, like fraud, right, or lie, saying that completely camouflages you on the front. I heard some rumors about this being able to protect from thermal imagery. Get out of here. Look, it's one thing maybe in the middle of summer or even fall or spring, but in the dead of winter, do you see what these guys are trying to walk across? How little heat you have to give off to be detected by thermals on drones at a significant distance. These guys don't stand a chance at all. And we've talked about this in recent videos, these 1, 2, 3-man assaults moving across open terrain. It's a suicide mission at baseline. I guess now they're on a suicide mission wearing a penguin-looking suit. We might see more of those coming up here before too long. Now, yesterday we talked about the possibility that an energy ceasefire might be in effect. Not an overall ceasefire. There are still drones overnight. I don't think any missiles flew into Ukraine, but it looks like the energy ceasefire might actually be happening. Ukrainian President Zelensky earlier today said, quote, "In all of our regions, starting from the night of Friday, there were indeed no strikes on energy facilities, almost none, except for Donetsk region, where there was one strike on gas infrastructure, an aerial bomb strike. We're also now seeing Russia reorienting its strikes towards logistics, towards key railway stations. Ukraine is ready to reciprocally refrain from strikes, and today we did not carry out strikes on Russian energy facilities." And a few notes there, it does sound like the most we're getting from Russia right now is kind of suggesting that they might wait until February 1st, which it's something. It's also just a couple days, and my understanding is the temperatures in Ukraine are set to fall significantly in the early or first few days of February. So, any reprieve is a positive for the Ukrainian people. We'll see how long this one actually lasts. I also want to make sure to stress that there is not a general ceasefire in place. Russia is still carrying out drone strikes and bomb strikes left and right. We're probably going to see missiles either tonight or tomorrow. The ceasefire appears to be focused on energy infrastructure. All right. So we'll see if Russia actually adheres to that. But, a drone flying into Ukrainian airspace, or even 100, technically is not a violation unless it hits that energy infrastructure. But even then, let's be real. Like, what are the repercussions going to be? So we'll see if this thing actually plays out. Now, yesterday, we got an interesting note from the U.S. ambassador to NATO, Matthew Whitaker, going on Fox News, where I can't tell if he meant to say this or not, because we'll play the clip here in a second, but he seemed to suggest that everything is agreed upon between Russia and Ukraine, with the exception of territorial control. In fact, pay attention to what he says about security guarantees here.
We're down to one issue, and that issue is territories. It's most complicated part of it. But, that's progress. Security guarantees, the economic benefits that a peace deal would bring to Ukraine are, done for all intents and purposes. And so, we just need to plan on getting this last part done. And I think, we are as close as we've ever been.
I mean, given how complex and nuanced the conversations are around possible security guarantees, it feels strange to me that the NATO ambassador just said that, yeah, we're good. We got it all. It's taken care of and moved on. That's like a major news announcement that just kind of worked its way into the middle of a statement that's just passing over. Nobody's really paying attention to that. So I don't know. Maybe he misspoke. It is kind of in line with what we're getting from other people like Steve Witkoff and President Trump recently, saying we're very, very close to an agreement both sides will get on board with. However, just a couple days ago, in kind of this security guarantee discussion, Secretary Rubio was asked about that during a hearing, I think in the Senate, where he was answering some questions. And here's what Secretary Rubio had to say.
There's a lot of talk about security guarantees. And it's something that there's general agreement about now with the case of Ukraine. But those security guarantees basically involve the deployment of a handful of European troops, primarily French in the UK, and then a U.S. backstop. But in fact, the security guarantee is the U.S. backstop. It is not and I'm not diminishing the fact that some countries in Europe are willing to place troops in a post-war Ukraine. What I'm pointing out is that is irrelevant without the U.S. backstop. And the reason why you need such a strong U.S. backstop is because our allies and our partners have not invested enough in their own defense capabilities over the last 20 or 30 years. Now, hopefully that's going to change. Hopefully that is changing. And in some cases and in some particular countries, it's already changed. But this is a fact that we cannot ignore. NATO is going to be stronger if our allies are more capable.
So if we were to take everything in those two statements from Whitaker and then from Secretary Rubio and say everything there is 100% honest and spot on, then I think you could read between the lines that there is a security agreement that has been reached for Ukraine, and the United States is going to play a significant role, maybe even backstopping it with military force. Now, that seems like a bit of a stretch based off of other statements we've heard from the Trump administration in recent months or during the course of the entire administration for that matter. But I mean, if both of what they said are true, we have something that's already agreed upon, and it could only really happen if the United States backstops it. I don't know. Maybe that's actually where it is. Either way, we are hearing from a lot of folks in the United States that some sort of peace agreement is very, very close. Again, I'm kind of skeptical, but optimistic that maybe we'll have some positive news here in the coming days. Again, for those interested and able to contribute to the ongoing fundraiser, picking up generators and trucks for 3 different Ukrainian units, that link is in the pinned comment and description below. That's all we got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.